Hi, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Democracy Matters. I'm Karen Kelly with my guest Kimberlie Hoffman, who I'll be introducing in a few minutes. And we're here because democracy does matter. It matters that we live in one of the greatest countries in the world, although at times we might forget that, and that as citizens of this country, there is so much that we can do to contribute to make that democracy work. And another way of looking at democracy matters is the issues that relate to our democracy. So we're going to be talking about those again today, and today's topic is going to be on advocacy, especially for businesses. We'll tap into individuals as well, because what pertains to businesses also pertains to individuals, but we'll be mainly talking about business advocacy. But I just want to remind you that New Hampshire Citizens Alliance is a 35-year-old New Hampshire-born organization that works on issues of social, economic, political, and racial justice. And we've been work on education and advocacy throughout the state. So we're going to start, as we always do, with some updates about what's been going on. I think most people probably know that we had some really good news at the end of March. Senate Bill 413, which was previously known as Medicaid expansion, did pass and was signed into law, which brought us the New Hampshire Health Protection Program, which means that 50,000 people who previously had no health insurance or health coverage will now be eligible for this health coverage. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show. I will be giving some action announcements, and we'll give you names and numbers where to call, but we are expecting, according to a press release from the governor recently, that by July 1st, people will be on those programs. Another recent piece of legislation was Senate Bill 207, and that's on paycheck fairness. We're very happy to say that that piece of legislation did pass both the Senate and now the House. It has a little bit of a move into a criminal justice committee because there's something about the penalties that needed to be clarified, but as far as we understand, it's a done deal, and that will move us a great distance towards pay equity, to bring the conversation and light to issues about uneven pay between men and women who are doing the same work, have the same experience, the same education. We'll probably touch upon that a little bit because Kimberlie's organization has done some work with pay equity, but that's just another really great piece of news. The other piece of legislation I'll mention has to do with minimum wage, and that one is not finished yet. The minimum wage legislation is House Bill 1403, and it just came out of a Senate committee, I think it's a Senate Finance Committee, inexpedient to legislate, which is kind of a bill killer. But what it means is it will go to the full the full Senate, probably next week, and the full Senate will decide whether or not they want to take the recommendations of the committee and basically kill it, or whether or not they will vote on it as a whole Senate and see what happens. So I will be giving you some action on that piece of legislation. That piece of legislation will bring the minimum wage up from $7.25 to $9 by 2016, and it will have in place a mechanism to have it increase along with the cost of living index. So really looks like it would be something that would help the economy and help a lot of people. So we will talk more about that when we talk about actions at the end of the show. I just want to also mention two other pieces of information, and one is that in the last week and a half, Speaker Terry Norelli has announced that she will be retiring. after 18 years. And so we want to thank her for her hard work on behalf of a lot of the issues, the progressive issues and issues important to the state. And thank you for your good work, Terry, Speaker Norelli. She's a friend of mine. We were actually in Beijing at the same time and have done some things together, so I apologize for being so informal. And one last piece of news is that Olivia Zink, who some of you may have seen on our show in the past, is another community organizer with New Hampshire Citizens Alliance, and she has moved to other pastures, and she will be working as the regional director for the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, who you might remember the previous person in that position was Natasha Perez, who was on the show with me a couple of times. So that's our updates, and we will again tune back in at the end of the hour for actions that we feel are important that you can take in that world of advocacy. So on to today's conversation. Very happy to have you here, Kimberlie.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for coming. Kimberlie is the past state president of the Business and Professional Women's Federation, and she also is a business owner who has KR Kitchen Remodeling. So tell us a little bit about those connections for you, and then we'll get going on our topic.
Well, I've been a member of Business and Professional Women for about 10 years for the state of New Hampshire. It is it's a national organization, and foundation is located in Washington, D.C. And basically we advocate for women in the workplace through education and through advocacy. They were actually founded in 1919 in St. Louis, Missouri, and the Federation of Business Club was led by Lena Madison Phillips at the time. And BPW Foundation was incorporated in 1956. And Marguerite Resource Center is established in 1980. And it's a great resource center for anyone to go onto the website, and there's so much information and documentation that's, from the past, but also that we can use today. One of the things that I enjoy about BPW is that they created a young careerist called the Virginia Allen Young Careerist, and actually Olivia was one of our YCs. Xandra Rice Hawkins was another YC, and
with Granite State Progress, one of our partners.
Yep, and I love that organization because, or that program, because it gets the ladies from 25 to 35 involved, and they compete, and we have, each of our locals has a YC rep, and then they go to state, and from state now we can go on to a local region, which is the New England past state presidents. The past state president from Vermont, Jackie Hood, has been very instrumental in getting that up off the ground. So in the fall at our meeting then, we'll have a rep from New Hampshire, hopefully, going, and it's a lot of fun.
That's exciting.
It helps young women to get in front of an audience, hone your skills. For me, for BPW, it's helped me with leadership role, which has helped with having my own company with my partner, and so that's what I get out of it. It's been very good. Plus, it keeps me active in politics. Yeah, which I like.
Well, and I was very impressed when I read the materials about the historic underpinnings, because it looked like the BPW really formed around around World War I.
Yes.
And as women went into the workplace during World War I and World War II, there was immediate work that this organization did to make sure that there were as equitable conditions as there could be. So I think that BPW has a long history of advocating, not out of like we want to be an advocacy organization, but if we're going to bring women together and we're going to notice what's going on and we're going to respond to it in a legislative way that makes a difference.
During World War I, what they did is they actually, the government, I think, got them involved in assessing what skills women brought to the factories, and basically, yes, advocating for them in the factories and in the workplace, along with the YMCA, which I never knew was young women. Christian women, yes, yeah. I was like, oh.
I'm older than you because I knew that.
I was surprised by that. I was like, oh, that's lovely. So yeah, there was quite a partnership during World War I and then beyond.
And BPW was the first to sign off on the Equal Rights Amendment,
yes,
right?
They were. Yes, they were.
That's,
as a matter of fact, a lot of people, like we refer to it as the Lilly Ledbetter, Fair Pay Act. And that was the first piece of legislation that President Obama signed into. And Lilly, who used to work for, let me see, it was Goodyear Tire. Yeah. She had worked for Goodyear as a manager, actually. And for years, you weren't allowed to discuss your salary. That would give you, instant firing. It was like her, and I haven't, couldn't find my facts on this, but the story goes, on her last day, an anonymous note was left in her locker that let her know that for all those years she had been paid less than her male counterparts. And clearly she was doing a great job because she kept getting promoted and she was a manager. So she actually has spent years trying to make that more fair. And actually, she won a jury verdict of more than $3 million after having filed a gender pay discrimination suit in the federal court, but the U.S. Supreme Court overturned it. And she literally has never received any kind of compensation whatsoever. But I love her words that she wants to, in a quote from her, what she said was, "I'll be happy if the last thing they say about me after I die is that I made a difference."
Well, and I think we all feel that way. So, yeah, she has made great headway for us, and the pay check fairness legislation that just was passed in New Hampshire is really a directly related to the work that she did. It involved, it's kind of like some whistleblower legislation, and I know that BPW tends to work a little bit more on a national level. And we go kind of back and forth with that at New Hampshire Citizens Alliance. There are some issues that we work on federally and some that we work on for statewide. So this happens to be one that is crossing both.
And it should, because if if we can get all the states together, that puts the pressure on, at the national level. Like, we're speaking. We want pay fairness. For me, I mean, it's interesting because I've been out of the corporate industry for a long time, and owning your own company, you're the lowest paid person. I'm not high on my agenda. I'm down here, but I need to get my vendors done first. But it is something that's near and dear to my heart, because I think it's like, I call it the common sense rules. If you're doing the same job that this person over here is doing, and to tell you the truth, it's cross gender, because it doesn't really matter. It just seems that women have been paid less on a historical level than men have. And a lot of that, I think, goes back to, men were supposedly the breadwinners. But that's not always the case.
Right, and it still bears out that at this point in New Hampshire, women make 77 cents
on
per
the
dollar that a man makes. In fact, let's see, just a few weeks ago, we had let's see, what did we call it? Pay Equality Day.
Yes, which means we've caught up.
Yeah, it was the 8th of March. But it
was March, that's right.
It took to April 8th for women to have made the same salary that men did, who are same educated, same education, same experience, all things the same, that they did at the end of December. And this is not an against men thing at all. It's just a fairness thing. And like you said, it's a common sense rule that says, why is this inequity there? And the fact that there has been on the books, and this is what paycheck fairness is addressing, that people couldn't talk about this without being at risk of being fired. So it is a bit of a whistleblower kind of situation. And the fact that has been, taken off the books here in New Hampshire is huge, because it is the communicating about that. It's shocking when people find out, what those discrepancies are. I'm a person that doesn't like. I don't watch a lot of live TV, but I'll watch a lot of old stuff. And I actually have been watching the series Bomb Girls, which some of you might know. It's a Canadian series, and they just did a whole the show that I watched last night was about how this woman who is on the floor in the bomb factory and is working, doing everything in a very dangerous situation, that she was making half of the salary that a man who was not doing anything. He was doing heavy lifting kinds of things to some extent. But it's like stockroom kind of stuff, not managing people, not working with dangerous materials. It was really well done, and obviously I really took note of it because we've been working with these issues here in New Hampshire. And so I know that the pay equity issue is something that BPW has been working on
huge advocates
for a long time. And today's topic is about advocacy and especially how businesses might be able to advocate. And I think that the State House can seem like, and the legislative office building can seem like a very intimidating place, like it's there and I can go in as a visitor, but like I don't think we've done a very good job of helping the average person realize that this is your house. This is the State House is your house, and you have every right to be there. It takes some navigating and some guidance to know when to be there for what. And that's what New Hampshire Citizens Alliance is all about, trying to help people understand when important things are happening there, that you have an opportunity to weigh in. And earlier, Kimberlie and I were talking about how, as a business owner with her remodeling business, there are sometimes things that she might get from us saying, hey, your business, we need you to weigh in on something in the State House. And even though she might feel like she wants to do it, or as an individual, any one of you who are listening might feel like you care about an issue, but sometimes it's that intimidation of, well, I don't pay employees the same way, so minimum wage, for example, isn't an issue for me. And I just want to dispel that. You are, as a business owner, you are in touch with what makes the economy of New Hampshire work. So your input on any issue that impacts employers, employees, and the economy of New Hampshire, it's valid for you as a business to be there, and it's valid for individuals who just simply have an opinion.
Right.
You don't have to be, if you have a story that is a personal story, that's a real effective means of advocacy. But there are plenty of people, not enough people, or we wouldn't be talking about this, but there are people who understand that as a citizen, you have a right to show up at these hearings and express yourself. And there are better ways than others to express yourself. There are lots of different ways to advocate, and showing up at a hearing and giving testimony is only one of them, but it's a really important one. But I just want everyone to know that it's your house. That State House is your house. Those hearings are for you, and we will do everything that we can as an organization to make sure that people feel comfortable and can find kind of what their angle is to be able to talk.
Your newsletter's been very important. It's like when I became president of BPW New Hampshire, part of my my dedication to the organization was to make sure that I brought forth legislature, make sure that people know it was available, what's going on. And Xandra Rice-Hawkins was one of our reps for BPW as our legislative chairperson. And I found your organization via that genre. And so I get your newsletters. And it's wonderful that we can just, with simply clicking, because you do the click pass-through, get the message out. And the one that recently came up was the Pay Fair Act. I saw
fairness.
blah. And I saw that there was an invitation to come and sit in front of the committee and to testify. And I was wondering, well, what would be involved in that? And so I did look into it. I did think about it. I did have strong feelings of wanting to participate. I'm not sure if I had something as a conflict that particular day. It might have been that.
Right.
But it was something that I definitely felt, that I would have liked to have done. And maybe it's simply a case of training people on, because when I became a member of BPW, one of the first things, I kind of jumped in with my, both feet. And I got sent down to, I ran for VP with somebody who was running for president, and she did not get elected, but I did because nobody ran against me. So that's kind of like, you're kind of, fed to the fire pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I got a great opportunity to go down to DC, and I had lived in DC for 7 years, and as a young woman, and I was very politically involved in lots of different organizations down there. So I kind of knew my way around, but I wasn't really sure what BPW was looking for, and they hooked up with the AARP. So we had a nice little session with reps from the White House who talked about the issues that were in front of Congress. Yeah, exactly. And then just what you just said about having that personal story. And that's what they said. The best approach was if you connected with one of these things, to tell a personal story. And so we did. And it was amazing. I had such a great time. Unfortunately, now that BPW USA is no longer in its foundation, we don't have that link to connect us and to bring us back down to DC. But really, for my organization, it's, I think, more of a case of if the state presidents would just start talking, we could probably pull that off, and foundation would support us, But
yeah, well, and like we were saying, there's book Bowling Alone that talks about organizations kind of that was written by, I'm sorry to say I can't remember exactly. It was one of the past presidents of the charitable foundation. Okay. But talked about how regardless of things like the internet and TV and all the things that's going on, that those things aren't as much a factor as just like a 100-year cycle, and that as organizations such as BPW reach that 100-year mark, it's important that they will have to kind of reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea that you're reinventing yourself with that desire to get down to Washington, D.C. and get that advocacy going down there. And as we've talked, to become even more involved in advocacy as an organization and as individuals here in
locally,
New Hampshire, as because it is just so important. I mean, we talked about that intimidation factor, and whenever there's like the issue that you were talking about last week, just so that people have an idea of what that looks like, because obviously you didn't, but you were like curious, is that generally we have a lobby day, and what that means is we invite people to come up to our office on the 3rd floor of 4 Park Street, and everybody is there. We have people to help with writing testimony. Now, ideally, it's good to get the testimony ahead of time, and it really doesn't take long. Like, had we had this connection,
I would have been there
at that time. I would have been on the phone with you, and we would have found what your nugget is, because usually it is just an anchoring story. And when you think about giving testimony, whether you're a business or an individual, it doesn't even have to be about you. It can be about a family member or a friend that you don't have to disclose a name or anything like that. It can be it can be a story, but it doesn't have to be your own. When I was first out there talking about healthcare issues, I was actually referring and giving testimony as a person, not as an organization, community organizer, about my son's situation, who works very hard, works several jobs. He has a college degree. He was not the usual person that opponents of healthcare reform were wanting to paint a picture of, and he was not that. And so I was out there speaking about my son, and eventually he came and testified himself, which I was very proud of you, Ryan, for doing that, because his story was important. And one of the things that we find so important is that the story be told in a way that is effective. A lot of times you might have anywhere from, I would say, 5 or 6 committee members to as many as 28, I think is the largest I've seen. And a day of giving testimony is honestly a long day, and we do understand that businesses can't always do this and take that time. Had a friend who was a business owner in Nashua of something called Handicap Pets, and he did a great job preparing and delivering his testimony, but it was a long day. So we understand that business owners can't always do that. Sometimes we would love to see that priority. There's wireless internet in the State House, so really you can kind of keep working if you prepare yourself while you're there, because it can be a long day. It is a democratic process, so when you go in and actually do the testimony, legislators get to go first because they are involved in other meetings and committees, so they need to get in and out. And as much as we think everybody kind of has those needs, the rest of it is kind of the order of the pink cards or the sign up, and the chairperson of the committee has some discretion about the order. A lot of them will want to, as much as possible, alternate someone who is opposed with someone who is in favor. But as far as the testimony goes, we always have talking points, so you can sort of get an idea there. We will help you. We always like to get an electronic copy of your testimony ahead of time, if possible, because then when there's another hearing, we can just call you up and say, Kimberlie, or send you an email, Kimberlie, can we resubmit on your behalf your testimony? At the hearing on minimum wage the other day, I submitted 21 written testimonies, and 14 of those were from business owners, 4 of them were from civic leaders, and the rest were from individuals. I work more on business organizing. I should say that I'm a past network leader for New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility from years and years ago, another different networking organization. So that's part of where my interest in working with business comes from. And the power, we always talk about how individuals have power to vote with how they spend their money. And there's sort of another piece of that when it comes to those businesses who, if I go and vote because I respect your values as a business owner and I give you business for that, then it makes me feel even better if you are stepping up to the plate and taking action, because businesses are definitely heard. Right. In the State House. And I'm aware I'm doing all the talking here. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, I'm going to drop back to just for a second about intimidation and the Capitol, because, as a child, I used to, my parents, we would camp up in the White Mountain area, and so I would drive past the Capitol with the big, beautiful dome. And as a child, I was like, oh, it's such a beautiful city. I'd love to live there. And here I am.
Yeah,
years later. It's like, wow, that's weird. one of the organizations, and I think it's one that Xandra got us involved in, was, unfortunately, they need somebody to step back up to it, but there used to be a girls' day at the Capitol, and it was young ladies, I want to say middle school age group, could be the Girl Scouts, but they would go, and I volunteered, okay? BPW was asked to chaperone, and I volunteered because, one, I love children, but two, I was curious. So I had a great time getting a tour of the Capitol, going to one of the, what would they call that room? The room with the tables where you go to testify.
Well, there are, there's the State House in front with the gold dome.
With the gold dome.
And then behind that is the Legislative Office building. Whenever there are press conferences, they're usually in the lobby of the Legislative Office building. Most of the committee meetings are in the Legislative Office building for the House. For the Senate, most of the committee meetings are in the State House.
Right.
But the actual halls, there's Representative Hall, which is where I forget the exact number, almost 500 representatives. That's where they meet, and there are galleries above where you can watch the proceeding. Those are open to the public. This is your house, and in that same building is the Senate chambers with their gallery as well to be able to watch. We
visited both of those, but then we also went into where they would have a hearing. And the kids got to discuss a topic, and at that time the one that they were really talking about was bullying.
Nice.
And then the governor came in and spent some time. But it did take that overwhelming feeling away from me. It was kind of like, oh, this is, a welcoming place, and and the same thing when you go, having lived in D.C. for 7 years, I know the city from a different aspect some way. But being able to go up there, and of course things have changed since 9/11. It's been very difficult, very different there.
Yeah, access.
A little overwhelming. After I left, I was like, oh my gosh. I wasn't used to all that security. But
that's a really good
But it does,
point.
Just visiting, visiting.
Which, if anyone wants to do that, they can call our organization, probably call your organization too, and we'd be happy to just kind of do a tour. I mean, there are tours in the State House that you can just go anytime and ask for a tour, and they'll let you know, or you can call ahead. And that is, it does demystify it a little bit to actually go in there. But I think it's so important to realize that this is your house.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think one of the things I like about your organization is that you can participate in a click, click, click type of scenario, or I think you're coming up with a class, a training, seminar.
Spokesperson training, right.
Yeah.
We haven't set the date yet, but I anticipate that it will be before the end of May. So the newsletter you're talking about, usually those are e-blasts that we send out.
Yes, yeah.
And their action, their events, their alerts. And if you, at the end of the show today, they will give my email address will be listed, which it's pretty easy. It's kkelly@nhcitizensalliance.org. Get your pens ready because that will be showing on the screen. If you are, interested in a spokesperson training, any of the advocacy or a visit, you certainly contact us. But to be able to get the e-blast from us, it's important that we have your email address so that we can
And I would encourage people doing that, even if they aren't comfortable participating at that point. It's the information that you receive as to what's going on in your backyard. Is priceless. Keeps my.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So it's so great talking with you and to have you share with us some of the feelings that a business owner might have as we talk to them about, or ask them to give testimony. I started talking a little bit about our lobby days. It's a very, friendly environment where if you we will ask you when you sign in, do you plan to give testimony? And lots of times people will be kind of like, well, I'm not sure. We'll give them the talking points. We usually have a couple people who are able to sit down with them and help them form their testimony, type it up on the spot, we always help people make copies so that they have enough copies to give to committee members. And it's a really great experience. And when you have it written in front of you, it's better. When you have a nugget, I have to say, one time I heard a woman giving testimony who had a very deep-hearted story to tell. Unfortunately, she hadn't learned to tell it in a way that got to the core message quickly enough and succinctly enough, and you could just see that she was losing. So to have her message lost because of the delivery, I mean, we could all say that it shouldn't be, they should just be paying attention, but when you're listening to 4 hours, I mean, there's just a reality there. So
there's a gift in speaking. That's why, in networking, you learn your elevator message, or unfortunately it can be like that.
With our spokesperson training, that's what we help
I'm
people
excited about that.
So excellent. So and when we talk about business advocacy, I mean, part of why I feel it is so important is not only because the voice of business is a big deal to legislators. And I'm actually going to read some comments that Representative Lori Carey sent me. This was, it must have been 2 years ago now when she first started. She was, I'm going to quickly say in her words, as a longtime New Hampshire small business owner, I have been disappointed that small business, or more importantly, micro businesses, have a voice that is barely mumbled at the legislative table. Small business represents the majority of the businesses and jobs created in New Hampshire. However, micro businesses, those with fewer than 10 employees, sole proprietorships, and mom and pop businesses, have little say in the legislation that impacts them. The reality in New Hampshire is that business people wear boots and not suits. They are found in every town, and many work long hours for low or no wages. Why would anyone work for little or no money, you ask? Because they love what they do and they pay their employees and benefits, just as you said, such as healthcare first. Whatever is left goes to the small business owner. Exactly what you said. Some weeks that may mean no paycheck if you want to keep your employees. And then she goes on to say that the uneven playing field can cause even the most skilled small business owner to stumble. From the unequal access to working capital to the unequal percentage of operating budget dedicated to fees, taxes, and benefits, one must ask what the future of small business in New Hampshire, what will be in New Hampshire without folks raising their voice at the legislative table and telling lawmakers that they care about the future of their general stores, their farms, their coffee shops, their remodeling businesses, and that these businesses are part of the quality of life and the streetscape of New Hampshire. So very well said, Representative Carey. Small business with its muddy boots, leathery hands, and baggy eyes, and passionate heart needs a voice at that legislative table.
And if you saw me yesterday, I was in total paint gear with my boots. Today was a nice day to get dressed up.
Yeah,
but it's everything she says is so true. And I am very concerned about small businesses here in New Hampshire because I'm here in New Hampshire. And yes, I'm a remodeling company, and there are some very large remodeling companies that do, I'm not that remodeling company. I'm that small, mom and pop. It's Rick and myself. And we're very pleased. I mean, we started our business in 2008, and it was a knee-jerk reaction because I lost my position with a company. And so it was like I came home and I said, well, first off, why are we doing this for others? And why aren't we doing it for ourselves? And why wouldn't we do it for ourselves? Because we have all the utilities, the talent, we know people. So my goal was to work with as many local vendors as I possibly could. So my plumbers, my electricians, all licensed, all professional New Hampshire, long time businesses. And on top of that, I work with as many local cabinet makers as I can and local fabricators. So I feel very proud of the fact that we were able to keep, through the recession, so many local people working.
That's great.
So yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
and we, we're not making a killing. We're just making a living. But it would be. I'm worried. I worry about you go down Manchester and empty storefronts.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I want to see us doing really well.
Right. And every voice at the table is important. And one of the concerns that I have had when I attend these hearings, and I might come with written testimony from businesses, and we, will have some businesses there, but the unfortunate thing is that some organizations that are sitting there giving testimony, I'm not convinced they are actually speaking on behalf of New Hampshire businesses. I know many organizations such as yours, such as New Hampshire Citizens Alliance, have policy, a procedure where they decide on policy.
Yep.
Their members have access to know what those policies
Yes.
are, what their legislative agendas are, and it's reasonable that as a business owner who is a member of an organization, or as an individual as a member of an organization, that if that organization is there speaking on behalf of you, on behalf of all those businesses, that they have some permission to be there.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not convinced that that is always the case, and I am going to name names here a little bit, because there's an organization that I just think New Hampshire individuals and businesses should be aware of. I'm sure I'll hear about this. Is called the National Federation of Independent Businesses.
Which I've never heard of.
And I've asked that question to every business owner I know, and they kind of vaguely think that they may have heard of this business. And they sit down saying that they represent something like 1,700 small businesses in New Hampshire. And again, I haven't met a business yet who has ever endorsed that organization to speak on their behalf. And I just want to say one more thing about most, there are great organizations. There's BPW, there's Zonta, there's the BIA is a they do good work to bring the voice, although at a recent hearing, the gentleman from the BIA did say that he did not poll his businesses, even though he was giving testimony on their behalf.
Right.
And he really kind of wasn't accurate. But for the most part, I do feel that the Business and Industry Association, they hold roundtables and task force, and they do put their policies public. So I'm not going to pick on them.
But business professional women, they do. We have these are our policies. This is what we are advocating for. And it's like, I'll say current issues right now. It's successful workplace movement, pay equity, support for women veterans, which is huge, contraceptive equality, family time flexibility leave, and equal rights amendment. As a member joining BPW, I know that from foundation and from my membership dues, that's what I'm supporting.
Right.
How that affects me personally, well, that's a different story. But these are things I'm passionate about, and I appreciate it. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to mention this. A very long time member of BPW, Concord, Violet Pierce Constant. She just passed away at 87 in December. And one of the ways foundation gets their funding, it's through corporate partnerships, grants, and individual donations. And God bless her, she donated, or bequeathed $10,000
Wow.
to BPW
That
Foundation.
gives me chills.
I know.
That's wonderful. Well,
And
that
our current
speaks to the work
president,
you're
it
doing.
does. Our current president, Lucille Wenzel, she was welcomed by Violet when she joined, and was encouraged by Violet, which is kind of Violet's legacy of encouraging the younger women to get involved.
Wow,
that's
great. And I'm sure there are probably similar organizations for men and men in business that I don't mean to have this.
Well,
be,
actually,
you know,
we have male. We're not just exclusive women. We actually do have men who are members of BPW.
That's great to know.
The mayor of Franklin, as a matter of fact, Ken Merrifield, he's a member and
Nice.
very active.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And so a lot of, so when BPW goes and if they were to testify as an organization, which I know
yes.
Zonta did on
Yep.
the pay equity issue, you are fine with that because you
yeah.
are aligned with the values of that organization, and those values are transparent.
If I had thought about it from that perspective, I would have said, "Oh, I should do that as the past state president of BPW. I should have done that."
We know where we
so now I know.
you now.
But I will say, living in DC, there is that element of the lobbyist. And I don't know if people realize, that is a business unto itself. And so
It can be, yes.
It can be. I sure saw it down there.
Oh yeah,
so,
definitely.
So just because we're in New Hampshire doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have organizations that say they're representing one thing that are being funded by, probably not necessarily who you think they're being funded
right.
by.
Well, and by way of disclosure, I have to say I have one of those orange badges because I testify on behalf of New Hampshire Citizens Alliance.
Right.
And as a nonprofit organization, a lot of times people think if you do something like that, it's not a nonprofit. But we won't go into the depths of that. But every organization, even as a nonprofit, has a right to express those policies that they, as an organization, have decided, through whatever process they have, that those are important and that they are going to advocate for those. And as a progressive organization, the policies that we advocate for are going to be more progressive than perhaps another organization, but that other organization has the same rights to be there as any of our organizations.
Yeah, which is what's wonderful about our whole system.
And sometimes, sometimes an organization, maybe you as a business owner, maybe sometimes an organization, like when I think of the Business and Industry Association, sometimes they fall in the same place as we do on issues, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And that's happened in this legislative period. And so I imagine as a business owner that sometimes they will be speaking to you for you, and sometimes they won't.
Yeah.
And what I would recommend, it's not about boot the organization out of your life because on one issue they don't speak on your behalf, but that might be an opportunity for you to testify saying, I'm a member of an organization and they're here speaking, but I see it differently. That's okay.
That's
it's not going to
yeah.
get thrown out of the, part of what makes us a great country and a great state is that we are allowed to disagree,
Correct.
And
Correct.
I was at a in-district meeting recently with Senator Booten, and I realized that our legislators have a lot going on. They have a lot of issues. So when we're there talking to them about, say, just minimum wage, as I was with him and a group of people and business owners, what becomes apparent is that while I might be there just about minimum wage at that moment,
right.
they've got a lot of pieces that they are trying to put together. But what we all have in common is that we do want a New Hampshire that works for all of us.
Oh, sure.
And we want an America that works for all of us. And this is very much where New Hampshire Citizens Alliance, it is sort of funneling into everything that we do, is really that when it comes down to it, we do all want a New Hampshire that works for all of us and an America that works for all of us. And I felt that at that moment with Senator Booten even though he was not agreeing with the things that we were saying, or the way I felt. So it is important that we all speak our truth, we speak that truth to power, and that it's not that hard, especially if you have an opportunity to have your thoughts written down and in front of you. The process of giving testimony is kind of a very formal process, and we can help people understand what that is. But I think where we were going here, though, is just make sure that you know that if you aren't speaking for yourself, who is speaking for you?
Yeah.
And I hope the letter that Representative Lori Carey wrote is available on our website, and I will double check that I'm not telling a lie about that. I'm pretty sure it is still up there. But I'll make sure that it is, because I think it really captures the importance. And I didn't mention this, I was at a Business and Industry Association meeting about the Affordable Care Act that Senator Sanborn, who is on the opposite side of the aisle from Representative Carey politically, and he said essentially the same thing. He said that as he looked at all of the businesses that were there, he says, I'm not seeing you in the State House. We need to see you there. So this is not a partisan thing. It's needed by everyone. I'm just realizing that this conversation has gone so fast, and we really do need to get to some action. Is there anything that, in closing, before I go to the actions that you'd like to say?
I just really encourage people, if they're interested in the Business Professional Women's Organization, to please visit our website. We do have our conference coming up, and I wanted to give you an invitation to come and actually speak to the group. It's typically our board meeting or conference. It's not a large group, but we are going to have our young careerists speak off, and we will have the induction of new officers. But we're always looking for opportunities to get involved.
And that meeting is on the 17th, and it's
May
open
17th.
to new people.
Yes, and it will be posted on the website.
Okay.
So
great. The things I would like to say then in closing, in addition to thank you, Kimberlie. I mean, I really, really have enjoyed talking with you. It's great to have you here. And I have a feeling we'll do more.
I think so.
But we talked about a spokesperson training coming up, and I am in the process. Probably today we'll nail down the date of that. And it will likely be at the very end of May. So everybody get your calendars and keep them open, get your emails to me so I can get that out there. We'll have it on our website too. A couple other things, the implementation of the health reform and the New Hampshire Health Protection Program, the expanded health coverage, I said is due to begin in July 1st. Don't wait until July 1st to start looking at this. There's this information will come up at the end of the program, but you can call this number 800-852-3345, extension 9700. Again, that's 800-852-3349, extension 9700. That's the Health and Human Services here in New Hampshire Client Service Hotline. They can help you know. So anybody, even if you're below 138% of the federal poverty level, you will be eligible for participation in that program. On the minimum wage issue, that vote is going to be going to the full Senate very soon. So we would urge you to contact your senators, let them know what your thoughts are about minimum wage, and you can contact your senators. The best number to get the Senate is 271-2111. There will be websites for both of these that will be shown in a moment as well. Also, in the world of business advocacy, we have a survey that has gone out to a variety of places that we would like business owners, and I welcome you to join in on this too. And I'm going to give you the link to it. It's for business owners to help us understand where they're at with the healthcare, because the shop marketplace for businesses to buy insurance is going to be having more attention now that we're past the enrollment period. And the website for that is tinyurl, this will be on the end, tinyurl.com/health advocacy board input. If you have trouble with any of that, you can contact me directly. And I think we did it. Oh, there's a couple of other things that, the minimum wage, contact your senators, I got that. And people might be interested to know that the UNH did a poll, and they found that 76% of the people in New Hampshire are in favor of raising the minimum wage, which raises it to $9. I think I already said that. Next Tuesday in Concord at the Capitol Arts Center, the Coalition for Open Democracy is bringing Trevor Potter to the Capitol Center for the Arts. So I think the best place to contact there is Capitol Center. On the 15th, there's going to be a discussion at the Portsmouth Library discussing the wealth gap. A speaker named Chuck Collins, so I'd recommend you call the library. Then we have the state conference for BPW on the 17th, and I think we covered everything. I guess that in closing, I would just really like to thank, of course, thank you again, Kimberly,
No problem.
but Jerry, Wayne, Helen, and Aaron, who are here in the studio and have helped make this possible. So thank you again. I think we'll be talking more about advocacy in the future. We'll be talking about public health. We will possibly do some kind of an on-air spokesperson and maybe even a bird dogging training, because we do have an election coming up in November, and we want to encourage individuals to go to the speaking opportunities when politicians are in town and ask them questions.
Very good.
Thank you.